The chandelier sparkled overhead in the Thompson family's mansion as their friends and business associates gathered to celebrate my engagement to their only son, Michael. I stood in my simple navy dress, the nicest thing I could afford on a secretary's salary, while my future mother-in-law, Eleanor Thompson, held court in her Valentino gown. My name is Sarah Chin, and for 2 years I've been the executive secretary at Thompson Global Investments. But what the Thompson family didn't know was that I was also a certified forensic accountant with a master's degree in financial crime investigation. Sometimes the best way to uncover fraud is from behind a desk that everyone walks past without a second glance. I still can't believe Michael chose her, Eleanor Stage whispered to her friend Victoria, loud enough for me to hear. A secretary. And you know these Asian girls always looking for a wealthy husband. I kept my face neutral as I refreshed their champagne glasses. 2 years of documentation, of carefully noting every suspicious transaction and irregular payment were safely stored in an encrypted drive. Tonight wasn't the time, not yet. The story of how I ended up here began 3 years ago, when the SEC received an anonymous tip about irregularities at Thompson Global. It couldn't prove anything. The Thompsons were too careful, too well connected. So they sent me in, under deep cover, to do what armies of auditors couldn't: observe from the inside. Meeting Michael hadn't been part of the plan. He was different from his family, kind, genuine, with a moral compass that made him increasingly uncomfortable with his family's business practices. Our love was real, even if my initial presence at the company wasn't. At least get her to sign a prenup, Eleanor, Victoria said, sipping her champagne. Can't have the help running off with half the family fortune. If they only knew that I had no interest in their money. What I wanted was justice for the hundreds of families they defrauded through their elaborate Ponzi scheme. Michael appeared at my side, his hand warm on my back. Everything okay, honey? Mom's not being too. Everything's fine, I'd assured him, though my stomach churned. Michael didn't know the truth either, about my investigation, or about what I discovered about his family's criminal enterprise. That would all come out tomorrow, at our wedding. I'd chosen the timing carefully. All the major players would be there. The corrupt board members, the complicit accountants, even the offshore bankers flying in from Switzerland. Eleanor had insisted on a big society wedding, wanting to show off her son's marriage despite her disdain for his choice of bride. Sarah, Eleanor called imperiously, be a dear and fetch my phone from my study. You know where everything is, being the help and all. I nodded demurely and headed upstairs. The study was exactly as I remembered from my countless late nights working there. The mahogany desk, the leather-bound books, the hidden safe behind the Monet reproduction that contained records of their real business dealings. What Eleanor didn't know was that I cracked that safe months ago, documenting every fraudulent transaction and illegal deal. The evidence was damning: $20 million stolen from retiree investment funds, laundered through a web of shell companies and offshore accounts. As I retrieved her phone, I heard voices in the hallway. Richard Thompson, my future father-in-law, and James Morrison, their chief financial officer. Everything set for the transfer tomorrow? Richard asked in a low voice. During the wedding ceremony, Morrison confirmed. While everyone's distracted by the vows, the last of the funds will move through the Cayman account. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, we'll be untouchable. I pressed record on my own phone, hidden in my dress pocket. Another piece of evidence for tomorrow's revelation. And you're sure about this girl? This, Secretary Michael's marrying? Morrison laughed. She's nobody, just another gold digger looking to marry into money. Too stupid to understand what's really happening at the company. I smiled in the darkness of the study. They had no idea that every word was being recorded, every document copied, every transaction traced. Tomorrow they would learn exactly how stupid I really was. Sarah, Michael's voice came from the stairs. Everything okay up there? Coming. I called back, composing myself. One more night of playing the quiet, submissive secretary. One more night of enduring their condescension and cruelty. Tomorrow, at exactly 2:15 p.m., when they thought they were executing their final fraudulent transfer, the FBI would instead be executing search warrants. The evidence would be undeniable, the arrests swift and public. The only question that kept me awake at night was, would Michael ever forgive me? Back in the party, Eleanor took her phone with a dismissive wave. I suppose we should be grateful, she said to Victoria, At least the secretary knows how to take orders. I caught my reflection in the window, small, unassuming, dressed simply, just as they expected, just as I planned. A toast, Richard called out, raising his glass. To Michael and his bride-to-be, welcome to the Thompson family, Sarah. I'm sure you'll learn our ways soon enough. If he only knew their ways were about to come crashing down. I raised my glass with a practiced smile, already imagining tomorrow's headlines. Society wedding becomes FBI raid. Thompson Global Investments exposed in $20 million fraud. Michael squeezed my hand, whispering, "Just one more day, honey. Then we'll be married and all this family drama will settle down." I squeezed back, my heart heavy with the weight of tomorrow's truth. "Yes," I whispered, "just one more day." As the party continued around us, I thought about the 2 sets of vows I'd be taking tomorrow. One to Michael, pledging my love and honesty, and one to Justice, finally exposing the truth about the Thompson family's crimes. I just prayed that when everything was revealed, Michael would understand why I had to do it. My wedding day dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect June morning that most brides dream about. I stood in the bridal suite of St. Patrick's Cathedral, watching Eleanor fuss over every detail of my appearance, not out of maternal affection, but to ensure I wouldn't embarrass the Thompson name. "At least she cleans up decently," she remarked to her stylist, adjusting my veil. Though I still say the Vera Wang was wasted on her. I checked my phone discreetly, 10:30 a.m. In less than 4 hours, everything would change. The FBI teams were already in position, disguised as wedding staff and guests. Agent Roberts, my handler for the past 3 years, was posed as a distant cousin. "Sarah," Michael's voice came through the door. "Can we talk?" Eleanor huffed. "It's bad luck for the groom to see the bride." "Just for a minute, Mom, privately." My heart raced as I stepped into the hallway. Did he know? Had someone tipped him off? But Michael's face showed only love and concern as he took my hands in his. "I heard what Mom said in there," he said softly, "and I want you to know, I don't care what anyone thinks. I love you for who you are, not what you do for a living." The guilt nearly crushed me. "Michael, there's something I need to tell you." "No," he cut me off gently. "Whatever it is can wait. Nothing's going to spoil today." If he only knew. The next few hours passed in a blur of photographs, last-minute arrangements, and Eleanor's constant criticisms. At 2:00 p.m., the cathedral bells began to chime. Guests filled the pews, New York's financial elite, corrupt business partners, and among them, dozens of federal agents waiting for their signal. "Almost time for the transfer," I overheard Richard whisper to Morrison in the vestibule. "Everything ready. All set. By the time they say, I do, we'll be $20 million richer, and those retirement funds will be untraceable." I stepped into my position at the back of the church, my father's arm linked with mine. He was one of the few who knew the truth. A retired FBI agent himself. He'd helped set up my deep cover operation. "Ready?" he whispered. I nodded, gripping my bouquet tighter. The wedding march began to play. The next few minutes moved like a scene from a movie. I walked down the aisle, seeing everything in crystal clarity. Michael's loving smile, Eleanor's smug satisfaction, Richard checking his phone for confirmation of the transfer, Morrison nodding slightly from the first pew. We reached the altar. The priest began to speak. Then, exactly at 2:15 p.m., as Richard raised his phone to authorize the final transfer, it happened. "FBI, everyone stay where you are." Agent Roberts stood up first, badge raised. Throughout the cathedral, other guests did the same. The doors burst open as tactical teams entered. Richard Thompson, James Morrison, Eleanor Thompson. Roberts announced clearly, his voice echoing through the stunned silence. "You're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." Eleanor's scream of rage cut through the chaos. "You." She lunged at me, finally understanding. "You did this." "Step back, Mrs. Thompson," Roberts warned, moving between us. But I was watching Michael. His face had gone pale as the truth dawned on him. "Sarah," he whispered, "what's happening?" "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "I never meant to fall in love with you. That wasn't part of the mission. But the love is real, even if my job wasn't what you thought. You're FBI. Forensic accountant, working undercover. Your family's been running a massive Ponzi scheme, stealing from retiree investment funds. We've been building the case for 3 years. Around us, agents were leading the core conspirators away in handcuffs. Eleanor was still screaming accusations. Richard looked shell-shocked. Morrison was already demanding his lawyer. Michael sat heavily on the altar steps, his head in his hands. I knelt beside him, not caring about the wedding dress. Every document in your father's safe, I explained quietly. Every conversation about illegal transfers. Every offshore account. I had to stop them, Michael. They were destroying people's lives. The secretary job was my cover. I have a master's in financial crime investigation. The SEC sent me in after they received tips about irregularities but couldn't prove anything. He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. And us? Was that part of your cover too? No, I said firmly. Meeting you, falling in love with you, that was real. It complicated everything. I almost blew the investigation twice because I couldn't bear to hurt you. The cathedral had mostly emptied now, save for some agents collecting evidence and a few shell-shocked guests being interviewed as witnesses. Did you know, Michael asked suddenly, about what they were doing? All of it. I nodded. Your father and Morrison were about to execute their biggest fraud yet, stealing $20 million from retirement accounts during our wedding ceremony. They thought everyone would be distracted. He was quiet for a long moment. Last month, when I told you I was uncomfortable with some of the company's practices that I wanted to investigate, you were starting to figure it out. That's one of the things I love about you, Michael. Your moral compass, your desire to do what's right, even when it means turning in your own family. His voice was bitter. Especially then, I said softly, it takes more courage to stand up to people you love than to strangers. Hours later, after the interviews were done and the evidence collected, we sat in my apartment, my real apartment, not the modest place I'd maintained as part of my cover. The wedding dress was draped over a chair, the veil discarded. 3 years, Michael said, staring into his untouched whiskey. You spent 3 years building this case. Yes. And you didn't think I deserved to know before today? Before I watched my entire family get arrested at what was supposed to be our wedding? I couldn't, I explained. Any tip-off could have warned them. They were already planning to transfer the money during the ceremony. If they'd suspected anything, they would have disappeared with the money, he finished, leaving all those retirees penniless. My phone buzzed, preliminary reports from the FBI's forensic team. They'd already recovered most of the stolen funds. The evidence was overwhelming. What happens now? Michael asked. Your parents and Morrison will face federal charges. The company will be placed under receivership while we track down all the victims and restore their funds. As for us, he finally looked at me. Was any of it real? The quiet secretary who loved old movies and always brought me coffee just the way I liked it. The coffee was real, I smiled sadly. So were the movies. And so was falling in love with you. The only fake part was pretending to be less than I am. Less than you are, he repeated. You know, Mom always called you worthless. Just a gold digger marrying into money. But you're probably the most qualified person in that whole company. Michael, I said carefully, I understand if this is too much. If you can't forgive the deception. He cut me off by reaching for my hand. You know what I kept thinking, watching them arrest my parents? That everything finally made sense. All those questionable transactions I'd noticed. The meetings I wasn't allowed to attend. The way they treated their employees, treated you. You didn't just expose their crimes. You gave me the truth I needed to see. So where does that leave us? He finally smiled, just slightly. Well, we still have a marriage license, and I still love you, maybe even more now that I know who you really are. But maybe we skip the big society wedding next time. Next time. I'm thinking something smaller. Just us, your real family, maybe a few actual FBI agents instead of undercover ones. Despite everything, I laughed. You still want to marry me? Even after I turned your world upside down. You turned it right side up, he corrected. And yes, I want to marry you, the real you, not the cover story. Though I have to admit, finding out my quiet secretary fiancé is actually a brilliant forensic accountant who just pulled off one of the biggest white-collar crime busts in New York history is kind of impressive. 6 months later, we did get married, a small ceremony on the beach at sunset. Michael had started a new investment firm. One built on ethical principles and transparent practices. I'd accepted a position leading the FBI's new corporate fraud task force. Eleanor and Richard Thompson were convicted on multiple federal charges. Morrison turned state's evidence and received a lighter sentence. The company's legitimate assets were sold, with proceeds going to repay the victims of their scheme. Sometimes I still think about that first failed wedding. About Eleanor's sneer when she called me a worthless gold digger. The irony isn't lost on me. The secretary they dismissed as beneath them had been their undoing. But the real victory wasn't in proving them wrong about me. It was in stopping their crimes, in returning stolen money to hard-working people who trusted them with their life savings. And it was in finding love with the one person in the Thompson family who valued truth over money. Michael and I still laugh about how we met. The undercover agent and the honest son of dishonest parents. He keeps a framed photo of us in our first wedding attempt on his desk, right next to the news article about his parents' arrest. A reminder, he says, that sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't what they seem, and that love, real love, survives the truth. As for me, I kept the Vera Wang wedding dress Eleanor insisted was wasted on a mere secretary. It hangs in our closet, a reminder that sometimes the best way to fight corruption is from behind a desk that everyone walks past without a second glance. And yes, I still make Michael's coffee just the way he likes it. Some covers are worth keeping, even after the truth comes out.